Hello, it's time for another edition of MLB This Week. It's the MLB This Week show. My name is Rich.
And I'm Gary.
And we're talking baseball each week with you. And Gary, all of a sudden it's looking like September out there. Last day of August we're doing the show here on Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, and a couple of trades snuck into the wire the last couple of hours today, but it went fast, Rich, and here's September, and we've got less than 30 days, or right around 30 days of baseball left before the playoffs.
It's amazing how fast it's gone, and as you said, a couple of trades going right down to the wire. Of course, today, August 31st, the last day for trades to be eligible for the postseason, and it looks like Adam Dunn from the Chicago White Sox, haven't heard too much from him in a few years, is on his way to Oakland.
Well, I guess they needed a big power bat after the Cespedes trade, so getting Adam Dunn for a little bit of insurance didn't help him today. I don't know if he made it out there yet, but they fell to the Angels, and the Angels are really increasing that lead, and what a story that is.
Yeah, Adam Dunn, he's 34 years old. He has 460 career home runs, and he's in the last year of a 4-year, $56 million deal with the White Sox. I didn't realize he signed such a big deal with the White Sox when he left the Nationals, but he's having a pretty good season with 20 home runs and 54 RBIs, but nothing like we've seen him hit in previous years. Very odd for Dunn to have a season like that with a...
Don't know where that's coming from.
Not sure where it's coming from either. We got some music joining us here on the podcast, but very interesting there. But Adam Dunn trying to step into the shoes of Cespedes, as you said, and the A's have really suffered since Cespedes left the club.
Yeah, they missed that big bat in the middle of the lineup, and Dunn is certainly the type of guy to fill that slot. He's not much of a fielder and not much of a he's sort of a go-for-broke home run or strikeout guy, but he's had a long career and 460 home runs. He's got a shot at 500 homers. Don't think he gets him into the Hall of Fame because of his other numbers, but he could be one of those 500 homer guys that don't make it to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk where this could be his last chance at a championship, being in the final year of a 4-year, $56 million deal. He's only 34, though. Maybe he has another short contract left in him.
I think he's got somebody will pick him up. He'd fit right in at Yankee Stadium there. Maybe the Yankees will try to get him in the offseason for a cheap contract with that short left field fence. He could probably hit 30 homers or more. Still got the big, strong guy. He's still got the home run bat. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yes, and we'll have to see what happens with the Oakland A's as they're in a good race, as you said, Gary, with the Anaheim Angels out there in the West, and the Angels are pouring it on. They now have a 5-game lead on the Oakland A's, and they've won 7 out of their last 10 and 6 in a row, whereas the Oakland A's have lost 4 in a row so far and 4 out of 6 in their last 10 as well.
They really made quite a run out of it, the California Angels, and boy, I mean, that's really something for them because they were down at one time. I think Oakland had an 8 or a 9-game lead, and they chipped away, and now they're up by 5. It's pretty incredible.
Yes, it is. Well, you have some news about discord down in the Lone Star State.
Well, Texas has had a rough year, and Adrian Beltre and Elvis Andrus have had a history of messing it around with each other, and especially on infield pop-ups, and it got so bad that on Tuesday, Andrus literally drew a line in the sand. He drew a line on the infield, and effectively telling Beltry not to cross it on a pop-up. So a little crazy there, but I'm told now that they patched up matters, and hopefully they won't go at each other's throat again for this. But there's been some hot discussions between the two of them back and forth, and as I said, I guess Andrus just decided he was going to take charge, and he literally drew a line in the sand and told Beltry not to pass over that.
Yeah, it's interesting sometimes how you see the third baseman cut in front of the shortstop, and usually that's the way it works. But yeah, and then some plays, I guess the shortstop thinks maybe the third baseman is going to do that, and he doesn't, so it ends up being a problem. But we'll have to keep an eye on that down there in Texas, and they've had a tough season so far this year. I think a lot of people expected them to do pretty well, but they're on the bottom of the heap, an incredible 30 games back, and believe it or not, they're the first team to get eliminated out of the playoffs. Not that they would have made it, but they're officially eliminated. The only team in the MLB right now eliminated from the playoffs are the Texas Rangers.
And everybody thought Houston was going to be so bad, and they're actually about 5 games ahead of the Texas Rangers. They had a lot of injuries. They lost some key players in free agency and some bad trades, and this is what happens. You know, you win for a number of years, and it just sometimes can come back to haunt you if you're not filling in the pieces. And, you know, you have to wonder, they squeezed out Nolan Ryan, and yeah, you got to wonder if his loss of control in that team really screwed them up, let's say, because he really was a baseball guy, and apparently he was pretty sharp at what he did, and you know, they forced him out, and maybe they're paying for it now.
Yeah, it's a good possibility. Nolan Ryan, of course, good for baseball, and he's, as you said, he's been with the team for a long time, Gary. Trying to bring up a graphic on our podcast show here, but yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on Texas, and one thing's for sure, they're going to have a good draft pick next year, the way they're finishing, so maybe that's part of their plan as well.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Well, wanted to let our listeners know that you can check out our website. It's MLBThisWeek.com, and you can see all of our shows that we've done this year. This is the first season for the show where we're bringing up some stories you might be entertained by and may have missed during the week in baseball, and of course the standings and the best players in baseball we're always talking about. So we want to invite you to our website, MLBThisWeek.com. You can join our mailing list there and get an update on shows when we're doing it. And there's also a podcast gear page there where we have all of our equipment that we use on the show here. So if you like what you see on the show here on YouTube and what you're listening to, maybe you're on Stitcher Radio or one of our other podcast outlets, you might want to come over and see the equipment we use, and right through those links you can purchase that equipment if you want to start your own show or you're thinking about it. There are some ideas for you. So, Gary, a great way for people to get involved in podcasting.
Yeah, and it's a great hobby, a lot of fun, and you can do it as cheaply or as expensively as you'd like.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to spend a lot of money. You could start like we did with pretty much a $40 USB headphone set, and it goes from there. But we have fun doing it, and you can. And if you do one on baseball, and we don't have it already on BaseballTalkRadio.com, you can ask Rich, because that's a great site for a number of great baseball podcasts, including Rich's Phillies Talk and My Mets Musings and so many other sites.
Yeah, we have Baltimore Orioles site there that's pretty good, and Atlanta Baseball Talk. Those guys are always turning out good shows. Phillies Minor League podcast on there. As you said, Gary has a minor league podcast there for the Brooklyn Cyclones, so check it out. It's baseballtalkradio.com for all your baseball talk shows. Well, Gary, interesting article this week in Jayson Stark's blog. Of course, he's a writer for ESPN, the baseball side, and he brought up some stats this week, and these stats are just amazing. The umpire betting stats is what he was talking about in this article of his, and some astounding facts that you can find that, for instance, Jerry Davis, he's gone 20-3 with home teams so far this season. And that's an incredible winning percentage veteran umpire Jerry Davis has. He has 20 wins and 3 losses when the home team is playing. So if you go by this, and of course this article was written a couple days ago, about a week ago actually now, and I'm on the page that updates these kind of sites, or stats rather. He's now 21-5 is Jerry Davis. Wow. He's like the home umpire's dream. Home teams have won 21 out of 26 games that he has umpired as the official umpire there. Right behind him, a couple umpires, Dan Iasonia, he's 19-6 with his home record, and Laz Diaz, 19-8. So those guys have a pretty enviable record at home with these home teams. Let's look at some of the guys that aren't as popular as that. Here's the bottom 4. Gary Cederstrom, he's 10-16 when umpiring at the home team's park. Alan Porter, 9-17. Chris Conroy, 7-15. And Mike DeMuro, 7-18. And here's the last one here, Clint Fagan. He's 8-20 with umpiring for the home team. So you got to believe there might be something to that.
How about Angel Hernandez? Where does he come in? Everybody hates that guy. He's a terrible umpire. So.
Yeah, he's usually on the list of people that him and C.B. Buckner seem to be the worst umpires. Angel Hernandez is, I would say, slightly in the middle towards the bottom, as well as C.B. Buckner. Let's see, Angel Hernandez is 12-13, so pretty much a 500 record there when he's umpiring at the home team's park. And let's see, C.B. Buckner, he's a little bit further down the list, and he's 11-14. But always, when I hear some controversy, it's always usually one of those two guys' names.
Yeah, that's why I asked. And Angel Hernandez, as you said, not well liked throughout the game at all, and yeah. C.B. Buckner. So.
It's amazing. Here's another name, Joe West, Mighty Joe West, I think they call him, 16-11 when he's at the home ballpark. So bettors always trying to give themselves a little edge, and they actually keep track of this in certain websites there. Umpiring handicap statistics, they call them.
I guess if you look hard enough, you can find just about anything on the internet, right, Rich?
Yes, you can. Well, we're going to move on to our next show. There's just no ice cream sandwiches for a certain player.
Well, if you remember, Jesus Montero has been a big disappointment to the Seattle Mariners. He came, I believe it was the Pineda deal or another deal, big deal Yankees made, and he was one of their stars of the farm system. He went to Seattle. And he came into spring training 40 pounds overweight. Now, I've heard of guys coming in, 5 or 10 maybe, but 40 is a bit much. And apparently last week he got into a scuffle with a cross-checker scout from his own team. And what happened was the scout allegedly had been heckling Montero during a rehab assignment with the Single A Everett Agua Sox, who were playing in Boise, and the scout then sent an ice cream sandwich to the dugout for Montero. That's when Montero snapped and approached the stands with a bat while screaming profanities and threw the sandwich at the scout. He had to be pulled back, Montero did, and by Everett pitching coach Noziel Cabrera. And on Friday, Mariners national cross-checker Butch Bacala came forward as the scout involved in the confrontation with Montero during the game. He refuted initial reports saying that it's not what it has been portrayed as. He added that he couldn't get into detail about what happened before speaking to Mariners general manager Jack Zurensik. He says he did not heckle Montero. In a further update, Ryan Divish of the Seattle Times reports that Montero's season is over, and it's now Zurensik his intention to have Montero aggressively address non-baseball issues that are potentially affecting his on-field performance and behavior. So apparently there's maybe some other issues going along there. He was involved in a suspension for the biogenesis scandal, and maybe this scout just said something a little too loud and got a little a wise guy by sending an ice cream sandwich to a guy that came into camp 40 pounds overweight, but not a good situation. So they've sent Montero home for the season, and we'll see how he comes into camp next year. I hope he comes in on the proper weight next year.
Yeah, that's amazing. When you're a professional athlete like that, they generally try to stay in the best shape possible.
And he's still pretty young, so he's still got somewhat of a career he can make. I can't imagine, as you said, being a professional athlete and coming into camp. I mean, you got to realize, even if you put on 40 pounds, you got to realize in December or January, hey, camp starts in a month. Let me, knock off 20 or whatever I can get off in a month,
Yeah, sure.
I mean, to show up 40 pounds is, like, unbelievable.
It's kind of embarrassing, really.
Yeah.
Well, somebody that isn't too embarrassed these days is Randy Johnson. Of course, he's a ex-major leaguer, 22 seasons worth. Randy Johnson played majority of his career for the Arizona Diamondbacks, and then he moved on to such teams as the Yankees, and of course he started his career in Montreal and played a number of years in Seattle as well. He's recently listed his mansion in Arizona for sale, and it's a real eye-opener, a $25 million mansion there, nestled in the hills of Arizona. And if you're watching our show on YouTube, you can see a picture of it. But Randy Johnson had stellar career, 22 years, grossed over $175 million in that career. And now he's known for his photography, actually. But let's read over some of the stats with this house. And it's not actually a house, it's just a huge villa type of built in Mediterranean style. Frames views of surrounding mountains on a 5-acre parcel with a main residence, commercial-grade fitness facility, a 2-bedroom guest house, a pool, and a tennis court. It has a cobble driveway, stone accents, and an ornate wooden front door that lends to the Tuscan ambiance of the home, and it was designed by a guy named Eric Peterson of PHX Architecture. So it's a 25,000 square foot living space, contains a chef's kitchen, a formal dining room with temperature controlled wine cellar, his and her offices, a study lounge, a pet suite with a wash station, 7 bedrooms, and 12 bathrooms. And you got to see this on the web. You have to just Google it and take a look. They have about 20 slides of this mansion, all the different rooms. There's a billiards room, a wet bar styled in Western motif. The western wing of the home has a master retreat, complete with a sitting area, fireplace, and private patio. Also an office and a poker room. The mansion also contains its own movie theater. So this place is really something. It sounds a bit expensive, but $25 million almost sounds cheap for a place like that. With your own movie theater and the whole 9 yards.
You know, wouldn't you love to go to a place like? See, I don't know. It's hard to picture because, you know, I'm used to coming home and, you know, you walk into the bathroom and you walk through the kitchen and all of that kind of stuff. Can you imagine a house like that with 12 bathrooms? I mean, man, I can't. I've never been in a house like that. I don't know if you've been. I'd love to once just to see. Oh well, over here's the billiard room, and wow, I don't know. And they're always so clean looking. You know, there's never any clutter or anything like that. And I'm looking. I don't know. It seems the ones I've seen always look like more like museums than homes. You know.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't seem like anybody lives there.
Yeah, and I you know, it's hard to picture somebody just, hey, honey, I'm home. You know, it's so huge, and
yeah,
I don't know. It's just, though I'd like to try it once.
There's a wrought iron staircase that opens onto a lower level, complete with a screening room. That's the movie room, with stadium seating, a snack bar, and a ticket booth. Also has a professional recording studio, including a performance stage, and is adjacent to an instrument showroom. There's also a 3-car display garage as well, like it sort of opens right into the living space. So quite a place there for sale. Randy Johnson did well for himself, and now it's for sale.
But, you know, you got a place that big and you only got 3-car garage. I mean, you know, I'd want like an 8-car garage, you know. Half of that would be filled with junk anyway, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting. They had a picture of the garage as well, and there was 1 car in there, but there was a big toolbox on wheels, but that was about it. Nothing that you would think would be cluttered into a big garage like that.
And then I'm always wondering, where did they put all that crap?
Yeah.
Everybody's got crap. Let's face it. Everybody's got junk. Where do they put it? Unless they got so many closets and stuff that they can, you know, everything looks organized, where we have stuff that's disorganized. You know what I mean? Maybe that's why, because the house is so darn big.
Yeah. And just this past week as well, Kenny Rogers, ex-Texas Ranger, he just retired. He put his mansion up for sale as well. It's going for just under $15 million at $14.697, nestled in the hills and meadows amongst 24 acres with a country French chateau, a guest house, a pool, an outdoor entertainment pavilion, and a custom barn with 2 stalls. This home or mansion looks something right out of the French countryside. It's got a master sports suite with 2 full bathrooms, 2 fireplaces, a private sitting room, and a heated flooring. A guest house adds an additional bedroom, 2 bathrooms, and a kitchen. So Kenny Rogers also putting his Texas mansion up for sale, and the lifestyles of the rich and famous ball players.
And those guest houses are probably, you know, twice the size of our houses.
Yeah, absolutely. And they, as you said, there's
in either of these houses, nothing about an elevator.
Didn't say too much. Let's see. Clad in hardwood and stone, the home features vaulted interiors, exposed beams, delicate molding, custom wood, and stone fireplaces, 12,316 square feet of living space. There's your elevator. It includes an elevator, a gourmet kitchen, a formal dining room, a living room, a solarium, a wood-paneled library/study, 5 bedrooms, 6 full bathrooms, and 9 fireplaces.
Wow. That's a lot of wood.
So there you have it. A couple of former baseball player mansions for sale this past week.
That is another thing. Can you picture Kenny Rogers logging wood through the house to nine fireplaces? How do these fireplaces get wood? Unless maybe they're gas. That's true. You know, they got those gas ones now, and they're a lot neater and cleaner. You don't have to drag the wood, but I mean, I don't know. This is the way my corrupt mind works, I guess. I can't. I just think of weird things.
It is hard to imagine. They probably have an employee or two that handle all the affairs of the house.
Yeah, probably so.
Well, you have a story here, interesting story. Sportsmanship is not dead.
Yes.
In a national pastime.
Yeah, it's a great story about an outfielder for Kansas City, Lorenzo Cain, and Oswaldo Arcia, who is with the Minnesota Twins, not household names, but they exhibited a moment of talent and sportsmanship that really does deserve recognition. In the top of the 7th inning the other evening, with the Twins leading 5-4, Arcia crushed a pitch from the Royals reliever Francesli Bueno. I'm having a rough time with names tonight, folks. I'm sorry. In center field, Cain raced back to the warning track, leaping at the fence 400 feet from home plate, and flashed the leather and made a really nice grab of the ball. And on the other side, Arcia was rounding first, and between first and second, he was a little confused at first because I don't think he believed that the ball was going to be caught. But he stopped and he tipped his hat, or his helmet, that is, to Cain, and the Venezuelan then trotted back towards the visitor's dugout in complete disbelief. The Royals bench then erupted with a tipping of the hat to Cain. So nice to see your enemies on the field, but it's nice for someone from the other team to recognize sensational play, and you're upset that it happened to you, but at least young Arcia was smart enough and kind enough and nice enough to recognize sensational play was made on him.
Yeah, it's pretty decent nowadays. I kind of thought you were going to say after he tipped his hat it inspired a brawl, but that's usually what happens. But yeah, that's a rare occurrence of good sportsmanship there.
Yeah, and it's you don't see it so much, as you say. Either they start a brawl or they start throwing at one another or something. So, but he appreciated the fact that it was a sensational play, and really, it was nice to see on video, even as he took the hat off and went like that. Good for him.
Very cool. Well, we're going to look for some of our leaders across the American League here now. Baltimore with a commanding 9-game lead over the Yankees. They're 79-56. They look like they're cruising almost to a AL East pennant here. In the Central, it's Kansas City, 74-61. Only a half-game lead now on the Tigers. Just last week, I think, Gary, that was a few-game lead, was it not?
Yeah, I think they were up to 2.5, something like that. Now Detroit's slowly creeping back in again. And look at Cleveland. Cleveland is they're not out of it yet. They're 3.5 back, but they're kind of creeping in there too.
Yeah, whoever gets hot now in September might end up winning that AL Central.
Yeah, for sure.
Out west, we were talking earlier in the show, it's the LA Angels now pulling away a little bit on the Oakland A's. 83 and 53 record. They're 30 games over 500, 6-game winning streak. You had to figure one year they're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, and but Oakland's really done kind of a folderoo. I mean, if you think back to the trading deadline, everybody seemed to think that when they got Lester and who else did they pick up? Picked up another. Samardzija. That was it. That they had the pitching, and the same thing with Detroit. If you think about it, everybody thought once they got Price, boy, the last 3 Cy Young Award winners. I mean, and both teams now have fallen back instead of charging forward. So you got to give it to the Angels. They've lost their star pitcher and still continue to win.
Yeah, that's for sure. They're turned a corner, it seems like, on their previous seasons. They've had a rough time getting further into the playoffs. Over in the National League, it's the Washington Nationals, 77 and 58 record. It looks like the Atlanta Braves are stumbling here and there. They're now 6.5 game back on the Nationals. Miami Marlins, they are 10.5 games back, and they look like they were going to do something, but they dropped off a little bit. And of course, Gary's Mets and my Phillies are anchoring the bottom of the NL East.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think Washington's starting to grab control of this division. And, 3 cheers for the Marlins. I mean, they are only 2 games under 500, and they've been around there all year, around 500. So nobody expected this. And I think they've got an MVP candidate there in Stanton this year. I mean, nobody else is really that outstanding, having that terrific a year as far as a hitter or a fielder goes within the National League. So I think you'd have to consider Stanton. He's having a terrific year. And I know usually he goes to a winning ball club, but would this team have been this high without him? That's the question. The story goes Ralph Kiner went in to ask Branch Rickey one year for a raise, and Branch Rickey told Ralph Kiner, who had hit like 50 home runs or something, he says, "We finished last with you. We could finish last without you." So, but I think I don't think Miami would be in this position without Stanton, and he may have to be considered for the MVP.
Yeah, and the Marlins and the Mets kick off a series starting tomorrow, September 1st, for a 3-game series. So it'd be interesting to see what happens in that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to take a look at the West, NL West, it's the Dodgers who look like they were going to run away with this. And let me see, I've lost my spot here in the standings page.
Well, the Giants are starting to creep back in again, as they're only 2.5 out now. So that's going to be another interesting race. And Rich, we kind of skimmed over the Central Division, which is actually in a dead heat right now, as St. Louis has caught Milwaukee. Milwaukee's lost their last 5. St. Louis was won their last 2. And they're both at 73 and 63 now. So, and Pittsburgh is only 2 games out, so they're still in it. And I don't know whether St. Louis can hang on to this, but I feel bad for the Brewers. They've been up there all year, still in a tie, and one way or the other tied for the wild card. So. But pretty amazing how so many races this year have tightened up, and just a few have separated themselves. But it's really been a very fascinating year.
Yeah, it looks like Milwaukee's lost their last 5 in a row, and 2-8 in their last 10. So yeah, they've had a rough last 10 days or so. Cardinals creeping back up. They've won their last 2, even though they're 4-6 in their last 10, the stumbling Brewers have stumbled a little bit. We'll have to see what September brings for them. And as I said before I lost my spot here, the Dodgers, with a 1-game winning streak, they're up on the Giants by 2.5 games. So most interesting has to be the NL Central so far.
Yeah, and I think the Brewers just went out to the coast and had a rough time out there with the Giants, and I think they played the Dodgers also. So, not the time of year, but maybe it is better now because now they still have the month. They're still tied for first. Maybe their West Coast trip is finished, so now they can just concentrate on business at hand here. You always hate to get that West Coast trip late in the year like that. I remember one year the Mets were in a pennant race, and they had a trip out to the West Coast, and they actually had a pretty good trip, but you just cringe at that because it's just such between the travel and just the time difference and everything, you really cringe at it, and they got through it okay, but now Milwaukee's got that out of the way. They can concentrate on playing winning baseball again.
That's for sure. And taking a look at the wild card teams, it's Oakland and Detroit would be the wild card teams today if the season were over. And over in the National League, it's the Giants, and of course the Brewers and Cardinals are in a dead heat so far, so they're tied for a wild card spot. But right underneath of those teams is the Atlanta Braves. Are 1.5 games back, and as you said, Gary, the Pittsburgh Pirates are still not out of it at 2 games back in the wild card race.
Yeah. And interesting, what would they do if 2 teams tie for the second wild card? Do they play a game then?
I think they would have a one game playoff.
Wow.
And whoever would win that would go on. But initially I wasn't a fan of the 2-team wild cards, but now I sort of I'm thinking this is making it more interesting towards the end of the season.
Well, I mean, you can go as far down. You can go pretty far down that list and technically say that teams have a chance, including your Phillies. They're only 11 out with. I know it's a long shot, but one hot streak could really catapult somebody in there. A lot of teams to climb over. That's the problem. But
yeah,
it really is allowing. I mean, let's face it, the way the Mets and the Phillies have been playing, the fans don't think there's any chance for a wild card slot. But the players do, and 9.5 for the Mets, 11 for the Phillies, 8.5 for San Diego. It may not be out of the realm of possibility, and even Miami is 6.5. So,
yeah, and the top teams would have to lose, of course, and your team would have to win on a consistent basis for that to happen. But we've seen stranger things happen for sure.
That's for sure.
So we'll keep an eye on this race for you as we get towards the end of the season. And Gary, you have the last story of the evening here.
Well, we have some Major League Baseball history made this week, Rich, when Giants pitcher Yusmeiro Petit retired his 46th consecutive batter, breaking Mark Burley's Major League record. Petit, who started Thursday's game in place of the demoted Tim Lincecum, put his name in the history books by striking out former Giants prospect Charlie Culberson for the second out of the third inning. 2 pitches later, Rockies pitcher Jordan Lyles doubled to left field and scored on Charlie Blackmon's RBI single and effectively ended that streak. So, but that's quite an accomplishment. 46 consecutive batters. He got out in a row, and I wonder how he has been a spot starter and a bullpen guy, so you can understand how he did it. Mark Burley was pretty much a starter pitcher, and I'm just wondering, did he throw a no-hitter in there somewhere, or? but it would have to be a perfect game. So I don't know. But congratulations to Yosmero Petit for retiring 46 consecutive batters.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I don't think I've ever heard of his name before tonight's show. But it's amazing how these streaks start, and then suddenly guy's name becomes a household word because he's getting everybody out. But yeah, it's an amazing feat there.
Yeah, it certainly is, and in this day and age with specialty pitchers and specialty hitters and everything like that, it's pretty amazing that he could come into games and get 46 consecutive guys out, but he did it and then gave up, of all things, he gave up a double to the pitcher. So go figure. But, the record is now his.
That's for sure. It's an interesting story there. And on MLB tonight for Sunday Night Baseball is a good race tonight. The Kansas City Royals and the Cleveland Indians, a couple of teams we haven't seen mentioned in the word playoffs in a while. So it's going to be a good race to the end of the season, Gary, and we'll be keeping an eye on it for our listeners and our watchers here on MLB This Week.
Yeah, we certainly will.
So why don't you join us for next week's show? We'll be on the 25th show, and we do our shows usually on a Sunday night. You can see us live. Just stop by our website, MLB This Week. Sign up on our contact page. Gary, you have a great week, and we'll talk to you again on the next edition of MLB This Week.
Okay, Rich, you too.